Let's bring Adrian Wojnarowski, NBA insider, ESPN, the Woj Pod, terrific writer. Hi, Woj.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Woj, NBA All-Star teams were announced last night. I guess the only quibble I had with any of them was Trae Young in that starting slot. I voted for Kyle Lowry, Ben Simmons certainly in the mix. When you think about who's an All-Star and who's not, how much does team success factor in for someone like you?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest. That's the hardest measure because, Bradley Beal's another player and not necessarily would not as him as a starter, but, he's on that Wizards team that he made that decision to stay and re-sign. But, man, this is an elite player in the league. I think the coaches certainly, I think that's as much of a factor for them as anyone. I think they like to reward players on winning teams, and I think you see that, with you'll see it with the reserves. But listen, at the end of the day, to me, all NBA is what really matters when you want to define, when you sort of put your mark in history of really who was the best player in that season. I think it's more measured by all NBA. The All-Star Game's an exhibition, and if people want to see Trae Young dribbling the ball through people's legs and making 35-footers, then let people see Trae Young. That's how I view it, because it's just an exhibition game that, by the way, as we've seen, like a lot of guys will do what they can to get named and then get out of the game.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. In fact, if that's the case, I'd say just go back to 100% of the fan voting and let them see.
Let Taco Fall start. It's fine, And I agree. Listen, to me, there is not much that is left just for the fans anymore. I have no problem with it being 100% fan voting. Let people see who they want to see. If they want to see Allen Iverson play until he's 38 years old in the All-Star game, let him see AI play. They wanted to see McGrady play till the end of his career, even when he wasn't an All-Star. Let him see him play.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. You were in New Orleans on Wednesday night for Zion's debut. Had him on your podcast afterwards. Your impressions of Zion's first NBA appearance?
I mean, it was that 3-4 minute stretch in the fourth quarter was electrifying. I mean, that building. I thought the roof was going to come off, and it's pretty rare when a moment lives up to. There was so much anticipation for that debut, and to see him, get a stretch of time there of scoring 17 straight, and reminding people why this was a player who was the number one overall pick. I thought. He's just different. And he said it to me after the game, like, I'm one of one. I'm unique. And the body type and how he looks, I think you have to train your eyes a little bit for something that is different than anything we've seen before. And I know, and Alvin Gentry said to me after, I asked him, for a comparable when he's putting an offense in and he's trying to figure out how to use this player to maximize that team. And, he mentioned Barkley as like the one comparison. Now, they don't necessarily play, Barkley became a better shooter as time went on. But I just think this is a winning player, and this is a guy, you saw it in college, and I know it was just a preseason, but, you could see the way he can get to the rim, he can finish, and this is going to be a player who, over time with that young core they have in New Orleans, that has a chance to be a pretty good team.
When you talk to the Pelicans front office people, how concerning is it that he has so much weight at his upper body? And at some point, there's only so much you can do to kind of prevent that type of weight from coming crashing down on those knees, or that knee in particular, every single time he goes above the rim.
Well, and I think it's part of the regimen they put him through while he was out, which was changing the way he landed, changing the way he runs. And I think for him, there's no question he's got to keep that weight down. He was probably, you looked at him the other night, he's probably around, I think just under 300. I think they've listed him at 285. He might have been a little more than that. But it's again, he is a player who, there have been great players in this league who've carried a lot of weight, and there's no question about it. It's a different body type, and but there's no question for New Orleans, trying to find a program and a regimen that keeps him on the floor, that keeps him healthy is, that's kind of paramount to what they've been trying to do, and it's part of why he was out so long. I mean, I think the knee and the meniscus was healed and healthy, and they wanted to make sure that when they put him back on the floor, he was going to be in a position to be able to stay on the floor.
Talking to Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN NBA insider, host of the Woj Pod, joining us here, Dan Patrick Show. About 2 weeks away, Woj, from the trade deadline in the NBA. Give me the most interesting team or player that you're tracking the closest right now.
Well, I think that, New Orleans, and going back to them, will be interesting. I mean, Drew Holiday's a player who, they may revisit something again with him between now and February 6th. I think now they're trying to see what this team looks like with Zion. There would be a great deal. There is a great deal of interest in Holiday around the league, but he's under contract for multiple years. They don't have to do anything with him. And New Orleans' plan has been to just play a few games here with Zion, see what it looks like. I think the market is, especially for, guys who've been all-stars like the Kevin Loves and the Andre Drummonds. I think the market's lean for them. I don't get a sense there's a great appetite with giving away really good first-round picks for players in this grouping. I think you're going to see a lot of stuff around the edges, Chris. I don't think there's going to be, how it is on February 6th, like between, noon and 3 p.m., there's 9 to 12 trades or 10 to 14 trades. And I think a lot of them are going to be around the edges. And, Andre Iguodala is still out there. And, actually, we've got him in studio on Friday or tonight at ESPN on Countdown. And I think Memphis has believed all along they would find a deal for him. And I think they've certainly talked to teams in both conferences. But if he gets past February 6th and they get a buyout, that becomes really interesting. To me, the buyout market could be potentially very interesting. Darren Collison, who is a free agent, not a buyout player, he has been strongly considering returning to play, and Collison's been focused on doing that in L.A., and both the Lakers and Clippers would love to have him.
Yeah, watching the Lakers last night, the game in Boston notwithstanding, they're playing good basketball. LeBron's playing at a high level, Anthony Davis back in the lineup. But the question of Kyle Kuzma still kind of lingers out there. And if he's the right fit alongside LeBron and AD in that kind of third star type of role, what do you gather is the Lakers' position on Kyle Kuzma over the next couple of weeks?
I think they've been listening for quite a while on him. But, Chris, the hard part of trading him, and you know this, he makes $2 million a year. And you've got to stack up contracts to make numbers work, because we assume if you're trading him for an established player who you think can help you win right now, and the Lakers are absolutely in win-now mode with this team over the next couple of years, it's a player who's making a lot of money, whether it's 12, 16, 18, 20. And how much of your depth do you have to trade away to make the money work on a deal? You have DeMarcus Cousins' contract sitting there. You can look at the roster and look at some of the names and what they make, and try to figure out a way to stack up contracts to meet the money of the player you're bringing back. And I think that's as much as anything is the hard part of trading Kuzma, because he hasn't signed his rookie extension yet.
Before I let you go, I'm watching the Trailblazers play last night, and look, they lose to Dallas, and it's kind of a red alert time for Portland because they get the next 8 games against playoff teams, the 9th being a trip to New Orleans to play Zion and the Pelicans. Been disappointing all season for Portland. They've had some injury issues, but do you get the sense they're going to kind of ride this whole thing out and try to reboot it next year, or could they be active going into a week from Thursday?
Yeah, I don't know that I don't think there's a, hey, let's save our season move for the Blazers. I don't think that makes sense for them, especially if they have to sacrifice something long term. And you said, listen, Nurkic is practicing again. They expect to have him back. And I think getting listen, they had so much size in the preseason, right? And then the injury, Nurkic goes down. They lose. They lost a lot of front court size and talent, and it became all of a sudden, a really small team. But this is a team who next year, you bring everybody back. That young group of Simons and Little are a year older. I think this is still a core that can be really competitive in the Western Conference. But I just think that the injuries have devastated them this year. But what you do have to admire about the organization, and certainly Dame Lillard at the top, is like they don't want to take a mulligan on it. Like he wants to do everything he can to try to get that 8th seed. I don't think they'll get there, but it's a very competitive organization. They've been in the playoffs now for how many straight years is it, Chris? Maybe 7 straight years they've been in the postseason. So there aren't many streaks like that around the league anymore. No
question. Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN NBA insider, Woj former editor of The Vertical too. Can you get ESPN do a 30 for 30 on The Vertical?
Yeah, I would love to do that.
The highlights could just be, Bobby Marks waving in front of a touchscreen and Tom Crean saying Tyler Lydon stinks. Like we could just roll that out there for. Hey, always good to talk to you, Woj. Appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon.
That's Adrian Wojnarowski, NBA insider over at ESPN.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.